Yeah, so I was familiar with Bethel when I was growing up, but actually did not consider it as a school to go to. So my senior year of high school, I was enrolled to go to another university, but then it was spring of my senior year. A friend invited me to come down to Bethel for Vespers. So it was like March of my senior year in high school, and we drove from Buffalo to Bethel on a Sunday night to come to Vespers. And I remember just being blown away with the community and the worship experience, and really felt like God was saying, Liz, this is where you're actually supposed to be this fall. And so I pivoted and I applied to Bethel. It was April of my senior year then, and ended up coming to Bethel for my undergrad experience. And I think about how that really changed the trajectory of my life. And part of what was in that season as well, too, is January of my senior year of high school, my dad had a heart attack, and he survived from it and he was fine. But part of kind of what God had put on my heart was maybe being closer to home, because I was going to go to a university that was farther away. And so Bethel was a good fit for that, where it was close enough to home, but far enough away. And really, my dad just loved having me here. I remember Welcome Week, they had Bethel parent t-shirts, and I think he bought like 7 of them and wore them all the time. I started as a business major. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. All of my siblings own businesses in addition to other jobs. And so I started as a business major, and I remember sitting on my floor in my freshman dorm crying, thinking, I don't think this is the right fit for me. And so I ended up going through the course catalog. And at that time, it was physical printed. And I highlighted every single class that sounded interesting to me. And then I figured out which major allowed me to take the most of those classes. So I landed on organizational communication with a minor in business, and then a minor in leadership. So I graduated from Bethel in 2009. And I did AmeriCorps with College Possible, which they help low-income, first-generation college students through the college admission process. And I had worked in admissions at Bethel during my undergrad, and so it was a really good fit because I had some understanding of the admissions process, and so got to work with those students and partner with them as they figured out where to go to college. And then I was working on the side as a makeup artist at Mall of America to make some extra money, and was going to be potentially going to stay kind of in kind of retail management. And then I also had the possibility of doing IT recruiting, and was really at a point in life where I wasn't quite sure what the next step was. And someone who had worked with in admissions when I was an undergrad student reached out to me, letting me know that they were going to be leaving Bethel. They were the admissions event manager, and they had said, you'd be a really good fit for this. You should consider applying for it once they posted. And so I considered it, but I actually didn't apply right away until then the manager reached out to me and said, hey, Liz, you should really consider applying for this. So I did. And then I ended up getting a job offer for an IT recruiting position, and the Bethel job offer, and a possibility for this retail management, all on the same day. Within like a 24-hour period. And so I ended up, I actually was right by Bethel's campus when I got the call from HR. It was Sarah Stanstad. I'm trying to remember how you say her last. Sarah. She worked in HR for a really long time. But so she called me. I was at the Starbucks right here by Bethel, and offered me the job to come work at Bethel. And it was just so funny because I'd had these other offers. And so I came to Bethel's campus and I drove around and felt like, okay, God, I'm going to come back here now again, and I'm going to work here. And kind of had the thought, I'll get my master's for free. But it's been, I think, 13 years now. So that's kind of how I ended up back at Bethel and stayed here for a while. Yeah, so when I was a student, I sang in the choir, and I worked in admissions in a variety of roles there. I was a tour guide in admissions, and then I also worked 2 summers as a student employee in admissions. So the summer between my sophomore and junior year, and junior year and senior year. And then I was, in my undergrad, I also was involved in student activities, the Bethel Student Government, and I was the director of seasonal events remember what year that was, but and then when I came back as an employee, my first job was the admissions event manager, so planning all the admissions events. And then essentially every 2 to 4 years, I've had a new role. So I was overseeing the campus visit experience and leading that team for a few years. And then I was the assistant director of recruitment for admissions for CAS, overseeing recruitment of all the kind of non-traditional students. So transfers, PSEO students, international students. And then that's also when we launched the Build program. And so working on the recruitment and admissions process for that. And then in the fall of 2019, I switched over to the Office of Accessibility as the director and have been in that position. You know, I would say what's really interesting is thinking about the relationships that I had as a student that are now a part of my life as a staff. Like I think about Miranda Powers. She was working at admissions when I was a student employee. And now she's my boss as a staff years later here. And so I think what I benefited from is when I was a student and was a student employee, I was given opportunities to grow in my leadership and my abilities. And so I feel like that has been the same as a staff as well, too. And to be able to then provide that for student employees. In my current role, I don't have as much impact on student employees, but I do with the students of kind of helping them advocate for themselves, build their communication skills, and just kind of helping foster that culture, because I really benefited from it as a student and now being able to do that as a staff. There's so many. I was thinking about just the list of all of the different women that I've been blessed by. I think the one in particular that has had the greatest impact is Avis. So I did not know Avis when I was a student at Bethel. I knew of her because I was part of student activities, but so I knew kind of her and her just kind of authority and who she was as a person, but I didn't really know her personally. And I was actually thinking about it on my drive this morning. The first time I actually met Avis was at graduation. I was the student speaker, and I was in the president's office preparing to kind of be able to go onto the stage, and she was interacting with me, and she's so joyful and just making me feel comfortable. And then she asked, "Oh, would you like a bottle of water?" And I said, "Yes, actually, that would be really nice." And so she went off to go do something else too. But then right as we were about to enter into Benson Great Hall, she comes hurrying and she hands me a water bottle. And I feel like it's just that she's one of those people where she just has this ability to meet individuals' needs, while she's also with events, you're thinking about the greater picture. You're thinking about all the people, but just her ability in that moment to meet my individual need right then and there and provide a water bottle and give me some peace as I was about to go up on stage. And then when I came back to Bethel as an employee, as the admissions event manager, she was the director of events, and she was such a mentor and a coach to me as far as how to plan events at Bethel, how to problem solve anything that came up. Her unique ability to be able, like I said, to think about people's individual needs, but also serve large audiences is just so beautiful. And I think she really helped pull that out of me too, and really being prayerful about events and having a attention to keeping an eye out of the different people who are at an event, thinking of both when you're planning an event, thinking about how to meet people's needs, but then when you're at the event too, managing it, kind of keeping an eye out for different people and making connections. And so she has been just an incredible mentor for me as well too during my time at Bethel, as I've discerned different opportunities, and such a blessing to me, and her leadership and her presence of having an authority, but also kindness and joy and fun, and has just been a model of what I would like to be as a leader too. And then just her as a friend. So just being able to have that relationship outside of Bethel too. And the other person that I actually, as I was thinking about this might get kind of on the next question as far as difficulties. But I was thinking about a season when I worked in admissions, and this was when I was the assistant director of admissions for recruitment, and Brett Heider was the director of admissions at the time. And he, as a leader, was very aware that he was able to help make sure that my voice was at, different meetings and being able to give me opportunities to grow. But I remember him saying, as a man, I know there are things that I'm not able to provide for you, and I want you to make sure that you're interacting with other female leaders at Bethel. And so I just think it was really speaks to his humility to kind of identify that and then fill the gap. So he connected me with Jeannie Osgood and a variety of other people at Bethel, female leaders at Bethel, and Christine Osgood as well has been a mentor too. But in particular, one of the things with Brett too, I remember at one meeting, he had brought me it was Brett, myself, and then Jeff Olson, who was the director of financial at the time, and then this VP, who was a new VP of enrollment management. And I don't remember what we were talking about, but at the end of the meeting, that VP said, "Okay, Liz, I need you to schedule these follow-up meetings." And Brett said, "No, that is not why Liz is here. You have an administrative assistant who can do that for you. Liz is here to share her voice and share her perspective and her expertise." And that was one of those moments too of he saw my strength and my ability and being able to give me opportunities, a seat at the table, and then also to kind of protect it when it wasn't clear maybe why I was there. And I was thinking too about that experience. That VP did not last very long at Bethel. And as I've thought about other kind of challenges as a woman at Bethel, as I think about situations where there have been difficulties, those individuals didn't last long at Bethel. They were here for a season. And I think about the culture of women in leadership at Bethel is that I think, so that VP, for example, whether it was on his own accord or nudged out of Bethel, I think realized, okay, this isn't the right culture fit for me. And I think about that as just a blessing that this environment and being able to work here and to have both incredible female mentors and leaders, but then also male leaders who've come alongside to make sure that my skills and voice is used too. Yeah, so I had both of my children before the updated maternity-paternity leave plan. And so that was definitely something I navigated of figuring out how to come back to work and maximize my vacation. And so my daughter was born pre-COVID and my son was born post-COVID. So there was differences, and I was also in different roles. So when my daughter was born, I was working in admissions. And so again, Brett Heider was the director, and he was just incredible in working with me to kind of help me kind of gradually come back and just provide additional grace. And he also, I breastfed both of my children, but so I was pumping at work. And so making sure that I had a space and time to be able to pump. And so again, I feel like he was really pivotal in helping make sure that I had the space, both physical space and time and transition as I entered into motherhood. And then when my son was born, I was working in the Office of Accessibility, and he was born in January of 2021. And so things were pretty still remote at that point. So my maternity leave was still kind of less than what it was, but there was a bit more margin just because of the world just looked different at that season. Yeah. But I would say too, as an employee, so even before having children myself, I had some employees who, during their pregnancies and returning from maternity leaves, being able to, I remember in particular, an employee who needed a space to pump because she also was breastfeeding, and having to negotiate on her behalf to find a spot, to get a key. And it was, as a manager, I was surprised how challenging it was. And so I think now, years later, it's much better, and there are spaces that are designated for that, and that process has been improved. But working with employees who reported to me too, to make sure that they had that kind of grace of coming back with maternity leave, but also with having a space for pumping if that's something that they were doing. Yeah, I feel like it's obviously the majority of my career has been at Bethel, but as I think about even the role that I play in my family, so I'm the youngest of 6 of a blended family, and so I've always been the coordinator, the event planner, the kind of pulling together all the different opinions of different people, and I think about how that played into my ability to then plan events, and then also doing now working with students with disabilities. But I think about just growing up of feeling like my ability to coordinate pieces is maybe just gifting as a woman, but then also kind of being able to step into more leadership. And I think about another woman who's had a big impact on me is Katie Bonowitz. So she was my boss when I moved into the Office of Accessibility. And Katie has this presence about her where she's, so some may say she's a bit intense sometimes, but her intensity is based on that she cares so deeply about people. So she's a protector. And I think that I've learned, and I've seen that similar kind of posture of kind of intensity outside of Bethel too, but the heart is different. And so I think having worked at Bethel, or a difference between kind of outside Bethel and in Bethel, is the heart behind it, of that kind of focused attention on students and making sure that students or staff or just community, who, part of whoever is in our community has access to the supports that they need to be their best self. And sometimes that can look like having a sense of authority or intensity, but the heart behind it is one of caring for people. And I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah. So I think that, I remember when I worked in admissions as a student employee and noticing that the admissions counselors at the time did not necessarily reflect what the student body looked like at the time. And noticing that was an intentional decision to make sure that we had people who reflected the diversity of the kingdom of God, because that is who we want to attract, is students that come from a variety of backgrounds, all abilities. And I think when I was a student employee, I didn't understand it as much, but now I'm seeing it more and more and understanding it, of making sure that people feel seen and feel like they, in the same way as a woman at Bethel, of seeing female leaders, it helps you then see yourself as a leader. But with accessibility, of really thinking about how Bethel can be a place where people of all abilities can thrive. And accessibility is one of those things where accessible design benefits all people. So, we often, use the elevators, or you use the push button door openers. And so those are things that are maybe designed for someone who has mobility needs, but we all tend to use them. Or I think about using a stroller with my kids. I use the ramps, or, and so I think about that in an educational standpoint too, where providing a well-designed, accessible course benefits all students, and then allows us to really serve students and ultimately help them glorify God and recognize their God-given abilities. But I think for me, as far as where I really started to see disability as a form of diversity, really was during my time in admissions, and just when the Build program was launched. So the Build program, really focuses on students with intellectual disabilities, the 2-year program. And so there's a specific profile of student that are eligible for that program. But when Bethel launched that program, I really saw that more and more students who didn't meet the profile of Build, but needed some form of accommodation or had some disability, maybe had an IEP or 504 in high school, they started to visit Bethel because Bethel had all this marketing about the Build program and really was known for serving individuals with disabilities, serving them well. And so I worked in admissions at the time, and so we noticed this increase of students who didn't meet the profile for Build, but needed some supports. And so partnering then with, it was the Office of Disability Services at that time, and getting them connected with the accessibility specialists to know what types of accommodations would be viable at Bethel and what that would look like. And so it's funny how God wove that story that now I'm in Office of Accessibility and having those meetings with students. But I think for me, the piece about working in admissions, you're recruiting students, you're trying to sell them on Bethel, but then now in my role, I'm still recruiting students because we talk with students about what types of accommodations they're eligible for, but it's then retaining them and helping them be successful, and sometimes helping them advocate for themselves and build those skills. And then now that I've been in the role for 4 years, being able to see quite a few students graduate too, and see, I saw a student at their employer. I was at a school, my niece's school, and I saw one of the students who I used to work with in ORS, and they're a teacher now, and kind of didn't make eye, kind of like smiled, but like look at you thriving here. And so, just really seeing that ability to really just reflect the diversity of the kingdom of God, and seeing that as a beautiful thing, because especially with neurodiversity, being able to see things differently and being able to bring different perspectives, and there's a lot of beauty in that if you kind of can have that mindset around it. Yeah, I know. I wanted to see, there were other names of people I was thinking about. So another woman who made a big impact on me was Nancy Bruley. So Nancy was one of my professors when I was a student, and I just feel like was one of those people who was so affirming and encouraging, she was a big impact on me as well. Another person, you talked about the kind of the maternity piece. One person who was a gift to me at that season was Patrice Conrath. And Patrice, we were on the advising committee together, looking at Sam. Sam was on that too. And so I had not really known Patrice prior to that, but getting to know her, and she just was, again, such an encourager of kind of as I entered into motherhood and being a working mom. And she even caught me puking in my office one time when I was pregnant. And she's like, you got this. Like, and so I just think about just the gift of all those people at different seasons of life that have been a blessing. And then just even being able to work with Patrice in a variety of roles, even now, before she left, when I was in Office of Accessibility. I could talk about so many women. There's so many amazing women at Bethel. And again, I just think as I reflect on how God has just blessed me with all these different women, and during different seasons of life, as an undergrad student, as a young employee, as a entering into motherhood, as coming back as a new mom, and even now as I've discerned, where my daughter will go to kindergarten, and navigating that process of entering that new season of life with people who have been wise counsel in my life, and also being able to partner and work together to do good work to serve students at Bethel. So, I would say, so I think about in 2018, my daughter was going to the Child Development Center on campus. So that's where she went to daycare. And Bethel, this was kind of pre-COVID, Bethel had made the decision that they were going to be closing the Child Development Center. And it broke my heart, because it was such a blessing to my family, and to be able to just be a part of that for a season, and just especially to see the women that were in that space loving on all those children, and just thinking about those young minds and hearts, and then seeing our students there serving. And so it it was definitely sad when Bethel decided to close. But I remember a conversation with Christine Osgood. We were walking into the offices. It was kind of right after that announcement had been made. And I said to her, I want Bethel to exist when my daughter is looking at colleges someday. And so Bethel has to make tough decisions now in order to be existing and flourishing in the future. And so even though it was sad that the Child Development Center was closing, I understood that those are the type of decisions that need to be made so that we can flourish in the future. And I was thinking, again, this morning on my drive here, I was thinking about when I was a student employee in admissions. Amanda Fox is one of the admissions counselors, and she was, we went on the Sankofa trip together. I actually don't even know if that's still a thing or not, but so we went on that trip together, and Amanda was pregnant with her daughter at the time, and now her daughter toured Bethel thinking about coming here in the fall. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, I officially feel old. That I remember her being pregnant with her daughter, and now she's looking at colleges. But I guess I share that to say I hope the same is true for, when my daughter or son is looking at colleges. And higher ed will obviously just look different then, but I pray that Bethel continues to just meet a need and serve the Lord and have Christ at the center, and be a university that can help students find their God-given gifts and a place where just God's presence is felt and honored.